So I'm going to pull up, share screen. We just got to find here. Acrobat Reader. Here it is. Okay. Where is this? Okay. So where we left off last time, let me get my glasses too, was here where we're talking about the four special parshiot that come before Pesach. One of them is related to Purim, that's Shabbat Zachor, but the other three are related to Pesach. And the question is, or the confusion for Shkalim, which is the first of the four special Shabbatot, is, and I wonder if I can just share another. Let's see. I might have to. All right. Well, let's see if I pull this up. You're still seeing the. All right. Let's stop the share for a second. Let me share something different. It's okay. You should see now the Sefaria screen. Yeah. Okay. That's what.
Yep, I got it.
Great. So here's the Torah portion before Kitisa. Here's Kitisa. This is what we read on Shabbat Shkalim. We read verses 11 through 15, and you can see that it talks about Shkalim. Let's see, I guess, where is it? Here it is, shekel. So it mentions shekel 3 times, and this is what we read. Now, this is also happens to be the opening of Parshat Kitisa. And Shkalim, the Shabbat Shkalim falls just around the time that we would read Kitisa. So this is the issue, is let's say the previous portion is Titzaveh, and the question's going to be, what if it just so happens that year Shabbat Shkalim falls the week you're reading from Titzaveh? It's going to be very confusing. People will think you're reading into the next that you've combined the two parshiot. What do you do? Do you start the next week on after the first verses of Kitisa because you read it the week before? Or it can sometimes fall the week after Kitisa, which is, let's see if I can pull this up. Where do we go? Kitisa Vayakel. So it's either Titza, it can sometimes be Titzaveh. Usually it's Truma, if memory serves. But it can be Titzaveh, it could be Vayakel. In which case, it seems like you're reading it 2 weeks in a row, which is what's going to come up. Okay, so now let me turn this off and go back to the text. So that's the dilemma that or the confusion that they're discussing. What do you do if Kitisa, especially if Kitisa comes when you're reading the week of Titzaveh, because it looks like you're going to be reading one right after the other, or it's going to look like it may confuse people because Kitisa, the Shkalim portion, is the next week's Torah portion, and people won't know, are you adding from the following week? All right, so this is that's just some of the background. So, Itamar, it was stated, if Shkalim is to be read, the portion of Shkalim is to be read, and it occurs on the Shabbat in which the regular weekly Torah portion is Titzaveh, that's the week before, what should be done? How do you read it? Because you're going to go right into Kititza. You're going to go right into the Shkalim portion. So Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha said the solution is 6 people read from the portion of Titzaveh until but not including Kitisa. And 1 person reads from the Shkalim, from the portion of Shkalim, from when you take the Kitisa portion until the end. So what he's suggesting is, and we do this occasionally on other special Shabbatot, where we're going to get to it, when you have 3 Torahs read. So what we do is we the 7 aliyot for the weekly Torah portion are put into 6 aliyot. Basically, you take 6 and 7 and you combine them into one aliyah, and then the 7th aliyah becomes the special reading for Rosh Chodesh, and the maftir aliyah is whatever the special week is. We'll see. It's either Hanukkah or HaChodesh. So those are the. So you do read. You take your weekly Torah portion and you scrunch it from 7 into 6. So that's what he's suggesting. You take the 6. You take 6 readers for Tetzaveh as opposed to 7. You read the 7 aliyot, but you read it through 6. You read it in 6 aliyot, and then the 7th reader reads Ki Tisa, the next week's the special reading for that week, Shkalim, and also the verses that follow Tetzaveh. So Abaye disagrees, and Abaye said, since Shkalim is read from the portion in the Torah immediately following the regular weekly Torah reading, people will be confused, and they'll simply think that your Torah portion goes longer than you're just reading extra verses. You're not making the Shabbat Shkalim section stand out. So he disagrees with that. And rather, Ella Amar Abaye Karu Shita mi ve'ata tetzaveh ad ve'asita v'chad tane v'karei mi kitisa ad ve'asita. So he says you read. He also agrees that you read 6. You take a ta tetzaveh portion and you fulfill the whole Torah reading. Right, he said 6 people read that, and you include the shkalim. So he says you read even more. You go all the way. I don't want to keep going back and forth in this, but let's try this again. I think it'll be a little clearer. He says, okay. Let's go share this screen. Okay. Share. Okay. He says what you should do is you should read all the way through Tetzaveh, chapter 27, 28, 29. Where is it? Come on. 29. And 30. We're getting there. Okay, all the way through 30 to verse 10, which is the conclusion of Tetzaveh. And then the 7th aliyah should also, so you've read that whole thing in 6 aliyot. Aliyah number 7 is this special section of Ki Tisa. And when he's saying up until this verse right here, make a laver of copper. So you don't include that. You read just up to there. And then you reread this. And then you read verses 11 through 16 all over again. So that's his solution. Because that way, at least you've read it twice, you'll know that the maftir reading stays Ki Tisa. But in either case, what you've got is a situation where you're reading the portion of Ki Tisa, which is Parshat Shkalim, into the regular, as part of your regular 7 aliyot. So the Gemara now raises an objection. Chal lihiyot beparsha hasmuchala bein milfanecha bein milacharecha. If the Shabbat on which Shkalim is to be read occurs on the Shabbat on which the portion to be read for the regular weekly reading is adjacent to Shkalim, whether it's the week before, which would be Tetzaveh, or Vayakel, which is the week after, they read it and repeat Shkalim. This is from Baraita. So they're suggesting that you would read it. You end up reading Shkalim 2 weeks in a row because you read it obviously for Kitisa, and then you read it for either the week before as part of that weekly reading or the week after as part of that reading. So you've got these two opinions. Bishlam ala Abaye. So Abaye you can work it out with. Ella Rabbi Yitzhak Napacha Kasha, but in Rabbi Yitzhak Napacha's situation, it's different because Abaye, because he would have included Parshat Shkalim as part of the weekly reading for Tetzaveh. He would have just added it on, and then he wouldn't have had the reading. He wouldn't have repeated it. He would have just had it one time. He would have included it in the 7 aliyot. So the Baraita seems to be suggesting that it's got to be read as part of really a maftir reading. In the case of Abaye, that's possible, but not with Rabbi Yitzhak Napacha. So Rabbi Yitzhak Napacha's response would have been, well, Abaye, it doesn't really work out so well either, because the reference of the Baraita to a case where the Shabbat on which Shkalim is read precedes the Shabbat on which that portion will be read as part of the weekly reading works out well. If it's Tetzaveh, then Abaye's fine, because he's saying you read it as part of the you add it on to Tetzaveh, and then you repeat it as a special week. However, if it follows, if it's Vayakel, then following the Shabbat on which that portion is read as part of the weekly reading, under what circumstances can it be found? It never occurs like that. You won't be able to read, I mean, this is my understanding of it, you won't have a situation if it's Vayakel, if Kitisa, if Shkalim falls on Vayakel, you won't have a situation where you can add onto Tetzaveh the next Torah portion, because it's the following week. So you'd have to, how do you read the Shkalim portion? Rather, what he says is that when the Baraita refers to repeating Shkalim, when the Shabbat on which Shkalim is read follows the Shabbat on which it is read as the regular weekly reading, it means that one repeats it on 2 successive Shabbatot. So the first assumption is that you have to read it and repeat it on that Shabbat. That's what Abaye was doing, right? You read it as part of the Torah portion, and then you read it as a maftir. But if it's Vayakel, you wouldn't read it. Well, actually, now I'm confused. Why can't you just read it as a part of the maftir anyway? Let's see. Let me just go back to Abaye again. Abaye says 6 people read, and then one person reads from oh, I see. No, I misunderstood Abaye's position. Abaye says you also read it twice. You read it in the 6th Aliyah, you're going to end up reading Kitisa, and then in the 7th Aliyah, you just repeat it. So he's not even talking about a maftir. That's what my confusion. He's saying in the 6th Aliyah you're going to read the Shkalim portion, and then in the 7th Aliyah, you're going to repeat it. Rabbi Yitzhak Bar Napacha didn't have that option. He said 6 readers for Tetzaveh, and then the 7th reader reads Shkalim. But now they're reading it differently. What does it mean to repeat shkalim? It means that you read it 2 different weeks. And so therefore you read it 1 week it's kitisa, and another week it's whatever the regular Shabbat, and you just make it the extra reading. And I think I'm trying to remember. Joshua Culp had a whole section about reading in ancient Israel. What do we have here? All right, well, I'm not going to look for it now. All right, so then we have. Okay, so here we have a similar case. Okay, if the Shabbat on which Shkalim is to be read occurs on the Shabbat on which the regular portion itself begins with Kitisa, right? Because, as I said, the Shabbat Shkalim is read around the same time as that very same Torah portion. Then what do you do? So according to Rabbi Yitzhak Bar Napacha, or Yitzhak Napacha, 6 people read from, okay. So he has 6 people read from Kitisa, but right after the Shkalim section. See, Shkalim is 30 verse 11 to 16, and then he says you start from 17 and then read to the end of that Torah portion. And then one person goes back and reads the portion Shkalim from at the very end. Now this is problematic because Abaye, as he points out here, now people will say you can read the Torah portion out of order because you're reading the chapter 30, verse 11 through 16 at the end of the Torah portion as opposed to the beginning. So you can't do that. You shouldn't read the Torah out of sequence. Rather, says Abai, this is what you do. You start with Kitisa, and you go all the way to the end, right before Vayakel, which is the next week's Torah portion. And then one person repeats and reads the portion of Shkalim as we have it, verses 11 through 16. So you include it, but then you read it at the end. Now notice again, he has 6 people reading the Torah portion, and the 7th Aliyah is the special portion of Shkalim. So at this point, obviously in the tradition, at least Abaye and Yitzhak Napacha, is they don't have a tradition of reading the mafti of like we do today. They had a different way of doing it, that they would include in the 7 aliyot of the weekly Torah that you have every week on Shabbat. One of those aliyot would be, the 7th aliyah would be the special reading of the week.
Did they do Haftarah then as well? Would this be like a substitute for that?
Definitely did a Haftarah because that comes up. But I'm not sure that there was an additional Torah reading, like the post 7 where you have the Maftir reader. I thought I wrote. I can't remember what I do from week.
It probably wasn't likely that a synagogue would have more than one Torah, so maybe the time flipping through,
well, that's
rolling through, probably would have been consuming. So in terms of time span, it probably would have taken just as long.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We talked about that last time too. That in this period of time, how many Torah scrolls did people have? It's questionable whether they had just one scroll. Now, there was a concern, I mean, it's considered in the Mishnah itself that rolling to the portion you want is considered a tircha de tzibur. It's a an obstacle. No, that's not a good. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's like an irritant to the congregation that they have to wait while you roll the portion. It should always be at the right place, and you shouldn't have to bother the congregation by looking for the Torah portion. So one assumes that they must have had more than one Torah scroll, but maybe that was an issue. Um,
We did read things, maybe there's some in this too, about using 3 scrolls, but it's hard to
right,
believe they all had that many.
right. So we're going to get to that in a moment. Anyway, here it says Tanya Kvate Abaye. In the end, they note that there's another baraita that accords with Abaye. Chal Lehiot Bekitisa Atzma, if Shabbat Shkalim falls on the weekly Torah portion of Kitisa, Korinota Vikoflinota, you read that Torah portion, and then you repeat the section of Shkalim, which is what we do today. It's just that it's part of the maftir. We read it from a separate scroll, and I don't even know if it's possible now that I think about it. I don't ever recall a situation where we read Kitisa and Shkalim the same week, but it is very close because it's very easy to, if we didn't roll this have the Torah scroll in the right place, it's really very easy to get to the Kitisa portion. Okay, so now we get to a new situation. Chal lehiyot b'tocha Shabbat makdimim l'Shabbat she'avra. So this was in the Mishnah. If the new moon of Adar, Rosh Chodesh Adar, occurs during the middle of the week, the congregation advances the reading of Shkalim to the previous week. That's what the Mishnah tells us. Instead of going to the following week, you advance it. With regard to this, an Amoraic dispute was stated. With regard to when the new moon of Adar occurs on Friday, Rav said the congregation advances the reading of the portion to the previous week, but Shmuel said they defer the reading of the portion to the following day, and it's read on Shabbat.
So I had a question about the Hebrew there. What does Chal mean? The start of
Chal means happens, occurs. Vayichal is to something occurred. So Chal Lehiyot, it happened that it fell in the middle of the week, B'tocha Shabbat. Here Shabbat doesn't mean Sabbath, it means the week. You bring it, you move it up to the previous Sabbath. Okay, so the question is, it falls on if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, you're going to you move it to the previous Shabbat. That's when we read Shabbat. We will read Shabbat Shkalim the week before. Even it wouldn't even be the month of Adar. It would be a couple days before Adar. But Shmuel's suggesting if it falls on Friday, you move it back to you move it back a day. So you read Shkalim in the month of Adar. All right, so here's the two opinions. Rav said makdimin, you advance the reading to the previous week. De'im kain botzri lahu yomei shulchanot. See, because the concern here again is, why are we reading Shkalim? Because we're giving people a heads up before Pesach to get to pay their shekel tax, I guess you'd call it, for the temple. Now, of course, Rav and Shmuel don't live at the time when there's a temple, but they're suggesting that they're thinking if they were living at that time. So he says the reason why they're advancing it is if one would read the portion only on the following day, there would be less than the required number of days, 2 weeks, that the announcement needs to precede the setting up of the money changing tables on the 15th. So according to we saw earlier, the the money changers, what do they call in Israel, so that you can bring your whatever you've got, and you can turn it into shkalim, and then you can pay your shekel tax, your half shekel tax. You can. It's going to be set up on the 15th, so you want to give people a couple of weeks notice of when they've got to start paying, or when it's going to be available to pay. Shmuel says they defer that's why you want to pull it, you want to move it up, so you get at least 2 weeks. But Shmuel says, Sov chamesar b'ma'alei shabta mikla. In the end, ultimately, in such a year, the 15th Adar, if the first of Adar falls on Friday, then the 15th of Adar is going to fall on a Friday, and the money changing tables will not be brought out until Sunday, because why? Let's see the notes. Because is it Purim?
Respect for Shabbat.
Oh, it's because of Shabbat, of course. That makes the most sense.
I'm a bit confused.
Right, the
here.
money changers wouldn't start because if they brought it out on Friday, they'd have to shut down immediately. So it doesn't make sense for them. So they would wait until Sunday.
I'm a bit confused here about timing issue.
Yeah.
When they say the new moon occurs on Friday,
Yeah.
that's what we would think of as Thursday night.
Right.
Okay.
So it'd be Thursday night and Friday would be the first day of the month.
Friday would still be was not Shabbat.
Right. So right.
We're crowding Shabbat, but it's not Shabbat yet.
Right, exactly. And that would be the issue. That's what they're saying, is that because it's just too close to Shabbat, so they're not going to bring it out then on the 15th because it's too close. You'd bring it out to Sunday, so you'd still have your 2 weeks of preparation time of getting the word out. Wait, did we skip? Wait, I think I skipped something here. Therefore, they can. Okay. So Tanan, okay, but now they're going to bring proofs for Rav's opinion. Chal lihiyot is the Braita. Oh, no, this is the Mishnah. Chal lihiyot b'toch haShabbat makdimin l'sha'avar. If it falls in the middle of the week, you move it up. You move it to the Shabbat prior to the previous Shabbat. And in such a case, they interrupt mafsikin l'Shabbat acheret. They interrupt the reading of the 4 portions on the following Shabbat. So here you've got 4 weeks in a row, and there's some assumptions that they're believing that these 4 special Shabbatot actually, according to one of the readings we had, we pause the weekly Torah readings for those 4 weeks. Those 4 weeks, we just read these special Torah readings. But you have we have this opinion that suggests in such a case they're going to interrupt. In a case where the new moon falls during the middle of the week, you move up Shabbat Shkalim the Shabbat before, and then you will have an interruption of those 4 portions. They will not, the following week, you're not going to have one of the 4 readings, because Zachor will not be read until the week after, which will then be the week before Purim. The Gemara explains the proof. What is it not that this is referring even to a case when the new moon occurs on Friday? Even in that case, this would prove Rav's opinion. Because in that case, again, you've got this break in between. If you, according to Shmuel's view, if you moved it back to the Shabbat following that Friday, you'd have 4 weeks in a row, so you wouldn't have an interruption. So the response is no. When it says bitoch, Lihiot betoch Shabbat, it means mamash betoch, really in the middle of, not Friday, which is not really in the middle. It's right at the end of the week. So betoch means absolutely the middle of the week. All right. Okay. So maybe we're reading it. Maybe they're reading it very carefully there, very narrow-mindedly, very narrow reading of betoch. So okay, here's another one. Tashma. Here's another attempt to another proof. Ezohi Shabbat Rishona. Which is the first Shabbat of those 4 Shabbatot? Kol shechal Rosh Chodesh Adar Lihiot Bitocha Ve'afilu Be'erev Shabbat. Okay, so this seems like it's a pretty good proof for Rav. Which is the first Shabbat of the 4 Shabbatot, those special portions? The Shabbat of whichever week during which the new moon of Adar occurs. And this is even the case if it falls on Friday. So it seems to say even if it falls on Friday, you've got to, it's the first week will be that Shabbat. Or at least that's what the assumption is. That the first whatever day of the week Rosh Chodesh Adar falls, the Shabbat before is the first of the Shabbatot. All right. So what's okay? So this sounds like it's Rav's opinion, but Shmuel said, Amar Shmuel, Ba. Doesn't say, but he's amending the Baraita. He's saying that the Baraita is being read incorrectly. It's not bitoch, it's ba. The v'chein Tana Devei Shmuel ba, and even his school taught that it's on which the new moon occurs. Wait, how does this change it? During which the new moon occurs, it should say. On which the new. So if it falls on Shabbat, I got to go back to the language here. Chal hiyot ba ha-Shabbat makdimim l'sha'avar. I think what the point here is, if it falls on the Shabbat itself, so the new. So I think that this is here. So it's not in the middle of the week. If it falls on that, what's the first Shabbat of these 4 Shabbatot? Whenever the new moon falls on that very Shabbat. So that's what it's talking. It's not suggesting if it falls. It's not even talking about if it falls in the middle of the week. It's the Baraita is only referring to the whatever Shabbat. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbat, that's the first of the 4 special Shabbatot. So he suggests that Rav's opinion is incorrect because the text is being read incorrectly. Okay. Okay, so now we find out that this dispute that Rav and Shmuel, who are Amoraim, are having is similar to a dispute that Tanaim, who are the scholars of the time of the Mishnah, had. They had a similar dispute. And here's their dispute. With regard to the reading of the 4 special portions, they interrupt the flow of Shabbatot. That is, there's a Shabbat in which no special portion is read. And that's the statement of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Okay, so he was the compiler of the Mishnah. And he says, and his statement is that there is going to be or there can be a week off from those 4 Shabbatot. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said they do not interrupt the flow of Shabbatot. So he's saying they would go consecutively. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, when do I say that they do not interrupt the flow of Shabbat? So it's not all the time, but in what years do they not interrupt the flow of Shabbat? When the new moon of Adar occurs on Friday. So if the new moon of Adar, Rosh Chodesh Adar, falls on Friday, there is not going to be, there are going to be 4 Shabbatot in a row with these 4 special Shabbatot. And that's because, since I hold that in that case, Shkalim is read on the following day. And therefore the 4 portions are read on 4 consecutive weeks. However, when the new moon of Adar occurs during the week, right, Tuesday, Wednesday, you advance the reading. And Shkalim is read on the previous Shabbat, even though it's still in the month of Shvat. And then you are going to have a break in those 4 weeks. It would appear then that Shmuel is following, or is in accordance with the opinion of Shimon ben Elazar, right? In that if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on a Friday, you move it back to the day after, the Shabbat that follows Friday. Whereas Rav holds in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who suggests that there's going to be a break in those 4 weeks, that there will always be a break in those 4 weeks. And that's because whenever Rosh Chodesh Adar falls, you're going to move up the reading of Shkalim. I just wanted to look at this. It says, yeah, see, now that we have a fixed calendar, some years the 4 Shabbatot, there are certain ways that 4 Shabbatot fall. So, and here's a mnemonic for it. So what is it? The early commentaries, yeah, they provided the mnemonics. Okay. The new moon of Adar can only occur on Shabbat, Bet, which is Monday, Dalid, which would be is that Wednesday? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Yes, Wednesday, or Friday. So in a year called Zatu, Zayin Tet Vav, the numeric value of 715, 2, right? Tet and Vav is 9 and 6, 15. If the new moon occurs on Shabbat, then the Shabbat that occurs on the 15th of the month is going to have no special reading. So if it occurs on Shabbat, okay, so Shkalim will be on Shabbat. I wish they had written on all of them. Shkalim will be on Shabbat. Then, wait, why is there no, you won't have a special reading because the week after, because Purim is going to be in the middle of that second week, which means you'll have Shkalim followed by Zachor, then Purim comes in the middle of that week, or not the middle, but I guess the Friday of that week, and then then you skip the week, we skip the Shabbat after Purim, which would be the next day, and then you have 2 weeks in a row of Parah and Achodesh. If it's a bow year, meaning that if the new moon occurs on Monday, that's 2, the second day of the week, that's Bet, then the Shabbat that occurs on the 6th of the month will have no special reading. So, right, because you'll have Shkalim, followed by a break, followed by Zachor, and then, I guess, Parah and HaChodesh. If it's a Dalid year, meaning that the new moon occurs on Wednesday, then, which is 4, then the Shabbat that occurs on the 4th of the month will have no special reading. Oh, what? Okay, right. That's okay. Because if it falls on Wednesday, Shkalim will be the week before. The 4th day of the month, which will be that next Shabbat, is nothing, and then following that will be Zachor. And if it's a Ubiyav, okay, meaning it falls on Friday, then the Shabbatot that occur on the 2nd and the 16th of the month will have no special reading. Okay, so that means, yeah, because the tradition now is always to move it up, because if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbat, no, I'm sorry, if it falls on Friday, we move it up, as Rav suggested. We move it up, and then the next week, because that's the 2nd day of the month, we'll have no special reading, because Purim is 2 weeks away. Then you have the following, so then you have a break. Then the following week you have Zachor. The following week after that, because Purim again is going to be will be on Friday. Oh no, it'll be on Thursday. And so therefore there's a break, and then the next 2 weeks. Okay, so that's how. So these are just so there's there's 4 possibilities today, because we have a fixed calendar. Okay, hope that wasn't too confusing, but that's what it is today. All right, now we get to Zachor. On the 2nd Shabbat, according to the Mishnah, we read 2nd Shabbat of Adar. We read Zachor, which is from Deuteronomy. It tells the story of Amalek. And it's associated with Purim, of course, because Haman was a descendant of Amalek. So Purim, Shechal Hiyot Be'erev Shabbat. So Purim falls on Friday. This is the, not Shushan Purim, just regular Purim, 14th of the month. If Purim falls on Friday, Rav Amar, Makdimim Parashat Zachor, Shmuel Amar Ma'acharim. So Rav says, which is what we do today, we move Shabbat Zachor to the previous Shabbat, but Shmuel says no, you push it off until the Shabbat the next day, which would actually be Shushan Purim. Rav Amar Makdimim. Why? Because they advance it in order that the observance of Purim should not precede the remembrance of the destruction of Amalek, which is achieved through the reading of Zachor. Right? Because if you celebrated Purim and then you read Zachor, you'd have already celebrated the holiday of Purim. You'd be like behind the whole point. You'd have already talked about Amalek and and Haman and all that. But Shmuel said they defer its reading. As for Rav's argument, Shmuel could have said to you, since there are walled cities that observe Purim on the 15th, right, the Shushan Purim, the observance and the remembrance come together, so it's even more perfect. His argument is it's more perfect to wait until the day after, because those people who are celebrating Shushan Purim, they're getting the observance of the holiday and the remembrance on the same day. So now the Gemara is going to try to prove Rav's opinion. B'shniya Zachor, veha ki mikla reish yarcha b'Shabbat mikla Purim be'erev Shabbat. Is it not the case that when the new moon of Adar occurs on Shabbat, Purim occurs on Friday, because it's the 14th day of the month? And yet the Mishnah teaches on the 2nd Shabbat, they read the portion of Zachor. This supports Rav's opinion that in all cases the portion is read before Purim. Because if Rosh Chodesh, because Rosh Chodesh would be the first Shabbat, and then the 7th, or the 8th would be the 2nd Shabbat, and it says you read it on the 2nd Shabbat. This supports Rav's opinion. Rav Papa said there is no proof, because you could use this argument. What's the intention of the Mishnah when it is referring to the 2nd Shabbat? It could mean the 2nd Shabbat on which a special portion is read, which if Purim occurs on Friday, occurs only after the interruption of the previous Shabbat during which no portion was read. So he's saying it's not second in terms of like consecutive 1, 2. It just happens to be that it's still the second Shabbat, even if you waited. If you interrupted the previous Shabbat and didn't read anything, this would still be the second of the 4 Shabbatot. So it could still be understood as the second Shabbat. All right. Okay, let's try another one. Tashma. Ezo Shabbat Shniya. What's the second Shabbat? Kol shechal Purim lihiot betocha ve'afilu be'erev Shabbat. Okay, once again, we have a very similar argument. The Baraita says, what's the second Shabbat? Whichever week during which Purim occurs, even if Purim occurs on Friday. So the Gemara explains the proof. What is it not that the Baraita teaches that even if Purim occurs on Friday, the case is similar to the case when it occurs during the middle of the week. And therefore, just as when it occurs during the middle of the week, we advance the reading to the previous Shabbat, so too when it occurs on Friday. So once again, Rav's opinion seems to be the understood. But Shmuel's argument is, once again, very similar. The Baraita should be amended. And instead of saying during which a Purim occurs, it should say on which a Purim occurs. That is, when Purim occurs on Shabbat itself, which that's the second, right? Which is the second Shabbat when Purim occurs on Shabbat itself. So he amends the Baraita so to fit his reading. All right. So Chal lihiyot b'Shabbat atzma, with regard to when Shabbat occurs on when Purim occurs on Shabbat itself, Rav Huna said everybody agrees, that is both Rav and Shmuel, that they do not advance the reading of the portion of Zachor to the previous Shabbat, but it's read on that Shabbat. Which seems to hold like that even Rav would agree with Shmuel, that if Purim fell on Shabbat, you would read Zachor on Purim. So you get both, right? You get the remembrance and the observance. Rav Nachman said, even in this case, there's still a dispute. For Rav maintains that in all cases, the remembrance of the destruction of Amalek, which we read about in Zachor, must always precede the observance of Purim. You don't do it on the same day. It was also stated that Rabbi Chia bar Abba said that Rav said if Purim occurs on Shabbat, one advances and reads the portion of Zachor on the previous Shabbat, as Rav Nachman understood Rav's opinion. So that seems to be the conclusion here. That we always move Parashat Zachor to the week before Purim, no matter when it falls. So we get a heads up, kind of a prep. Okay, here's the third Shabbat. This is Shabbat Parah. The sages taught in a Baraita, Ezoi Shabbat Shlishit, Kol Shesemucha LePurim Me'acharecha. So the third Shabbat, according to one opinion, is whatever Shabbat follows Purim. That week, that's when you read Parah. Itmar, it was also stated, Rabbi Chama Barabi Chanina Amar Shabbat Asmuchalo Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So he says you read Shabbat Parah, the Shabbat that's closest to Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So it sounds like you got a conflict here. One says you read it right after Purim, it's a Shabbat after Purim. One says you read it the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Velo plige, but they're really not disagreeing because they're referring to different situations. The statement of Rabbi Chama bar Rabbi Chanina is referring to a case where the new moon of Nisan occurs on Shabbat itself. And so he was saying in that case, it's right. So Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls on Shabbat. The week before In that case, HaChodesh is read on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and therefore the reading of Parah, wait a minute, is deferred to the following Shabbat. Wait a minute, no, not the following, it should be the Shabbat before. No, I guess I guess that's the point. That's what he's saying. Sorry about that. He's saying that no, in a case like that, you would read it the week after, because in that case, when you've Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you've got to read a Chodesh because that's what it's about. So in that case, you would defer the Parah to the week after. And that statement, where Rosh Chodesh Nisan occurs during the middle of the week, therefore a Chodesh is read on the Shabbat just following the new moon, and Parah is read on the Shabbat before that one, which is the Shabbat that is adjacent to Purim. Okay, wait a minute. Let's go.
I don't understand how Rosh Chodesh Nisan can be right after Purim. It should be almost 15
Right,
days
it's got to
later.
be exactly, yeah, right. No, that's correct. So
I don't see how.
wait. So wait. Let's do this again. When Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls on Shabbat, the only way that happens is Purim was 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
In that case, they say the portion of HaChodesh is read on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and the reading of Parah is deferred to the following Shabbat. Okay, so it would be actually, I guess, then the 7th or the 8th of Nisan, which is not what we do. And
Well, it
that's
also says the third Shabbat in the previous paragraph, which is the third
right.
Shabbat, whichever comes immediately after Purim. And then someone said,
That is immediately after
having an argument about whether it's immediately after Purim or immediately after
Rosh Chodesh. Yeah.
They aren't trying to say Rosh Chodesh Nisan is right after.
Right. So see what Rabbi Chama Bar Rabbi Hanina is suggesting is that, and I guess sometimes it gets confusing because you know what the rule is, you know what we do today, and obviously they're not saying that. It's not what Rabbi Chama Bar Rabbi Hanina is saying. He's suggesting that the third Shabbat is the Shabbat that is immediately after Rosh Chodesh Nisan.
So by third Shabbat means in terms of the special
readings.
portions.
Right, exactly. And that in
So
his,
that would still leave room for the third and the fourth before Nisan.
right, so in that case,
Got it.
you would say, right, the fourth reading, the fourth special Shabbat would be in between Rosh Chodesh Nisan and no, what am I saying? He's suggesting that it goes, that it's an so the Rosh so HaChodesh, which is the fourth, this is how he has the understanding it. Rabbi Chama is understanding that the fourth special Shabbat reading, HaChodesh, is read the following week, which would be right before Pesach, which seems weird. But they're trying to explain it's only weird it would only happen, according to Rabbi Chama Bar Rabbi Hanina, in a case where Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls on Shabbat itself. So then, in that case, he must be saying that you would reverse Chodesh and Parah. At least that's how Steinsaltz is reading it. In that case, the portion of a Chodesh is read on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Now you got 2 weeks before Pesach, and Parah would be deferred to the following Shabbat. So that only in that case does it follow immediately after Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And the other case is where Rosh Chodesh Nisan occurs in the middle of the week, in which case HaChodesh is read on the Shabbat preceding the new moon, and Parah is read on the Shabbat before that one, which would be the Shabbat that follows Purim. So you'd have basically 3 weeks in a row. You'd have Zachor, then Purim comes, then Parah, the next Shabbat, and then HaChodesh. Well, let's see, where's the note here? In Jerusalem town, the ruling is set that although HaChodesh should really be read before Parah, both because the portion of HaChodesh was given to the Jewish people first. That's interesting. And because its fulfillment is on the new moon of Nisan, whereas the first ashes of the red heifer were prepared only on the 2nd of Nisan. Nevertheless, it was considered fitting to advance the reading of Parah because it concerns the purity of the Jewish people. Okay, so there is a case to be made where Shabbat Parah would follow HaChodesh. We don't do it that way, but that's the case that they're making. So according to Rabbi Chama bar Rabbi Chanina, there is a case where you would read Parah after Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And that's just that's in a year when Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls on Shabbat itself. You read HaChodesh, and then the next week you'd read Parah. But that's not how we do it now. And in fact, what we do is we follow the sages, which made sense here. They're the majority. So it's the Shabbat that follows Purim, or a Shabbat which follows Purim, because sometimes there can be, we saw up above, sometimes there can be a break between Purim and Parah. Okay, here's the next one. The fourth Shabbat, they read the portion of HaChodesh. All right, the sages taught in a Baraita, when the new moon of Adar occurs on Shabbat, they read Kitisa, okay, as the portion of Shkalim, and they read as the Haftarah the story in. So here you were asking them before about the Haftarah. So clearly there was at this time, at the time of the Mishnah even, there were Haftarot. And they read as the Haftarah the story involving Yehoiada from 2 Kings. And which is the first Shabbat, the Shabbat of whichever week during which the new moon of Adar occurs. And this is the case even if it occurs on Friday. On the second Shabbat, they read the portion of Zachor, and they read as the Haftarah, the portion in Samuel, which talks about Agag. And which is the second Shabbat? The Shabbat on whichever week during which Purim occurs, and this is the case even if it occurs on Friday. On the third Shabbat, they read the red heifer, and they read the Haftarah, the portion, then will I sprinkle clean water upon you, which is the Haftarah for that. And which is the third Shabbat? That which is adjacent to Purim and after it. On the fourth Shabbat, they read, yeah. So it's got to be it's right after Purim. It's the Shabbat after Purim. Kol Asmuchala Purim Me'acharecha. Yeah, it's adjacent and after Purim. So it's that Shabbat after Purim. On the fourth Shabbat, they read the portion this month, HaChodesh, and they read as a Haftarah from Ezekiel 45. Okay. Let's see. And which is the fourth Shabbat? The Shabbat of whichever week during which the new month of Nisan occurs, and this is the case even if it occurs on Friday. Okay, so the fourth Shabbat is Shabbat that follows the week during which the new moon of Nisan, which follows the week during which the new moon of Rosh Chodesh, even if it occurs on Friday. So in this case, notice that the language was similar, whichever week during which the new moon of Nisan occurs, Kol Shechal Rosh Chodesh Nisan Lihiyot B'tocha, V'afilu be'erev Shabbat. But here, according to the halacha, it's after Rosh Chodesh. All the other examples we had were if it falls in the middle of the week, whatever the event was, you move it up. Okay. Oh, and here is where the idea of that in this period of time, at least in the Talmudic period, these 4 weeks are devoted to these 4 special portions. The Mishnah says, "B'chamishit chozrin leksidran." On the 5th Shabbat, we resume the regular weekly order. So it looks like they're saying is that you've taken these 4 weeks off from the regular Torah reading order. Now the Gemara is going to try to clarify it. To the order of what does one resume? So Rabbi Ami says, "L'seder parshiotu chozer." One resumes the regular weekly order of Torah portions. Rabbi Ami holds that on the weeks on which the special portions are read, the regular weekly Torah portion is not read at all, and therefore the cycle is resumed only on the 5th Shabbat. Rabbi Yirmiyah said, one resumes the weekly order of the Haftarot. That's where the Haftarot stuff comes in. So the only thing that were put off were the special Haftarot. Otherwise, the regular weekly Torah portions continue, which is what we do today. It's the Maftir reading is unique for the 4 special Shabbatot, and the Haftarot are unique. The Haftarot fit the calendar, not the Torah portion of the week. And so the 5th Shabbat, the cycle of Haftarot that is resumed. Of course, not exactly, because afterwards you're going to read a special portion. The 5th Shabbat should be Shabbat HaGadol. So we actually have a special Haftarah for that week too. Amar Abaye, Kavate de Rabbi Ami mistabra. It stands to reason that one should rule in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Ami, who says, no, we take a break for 4 weeks. We're just focusing on these 4 special Torah readings. Because it says in a Mishnah, Lakol mafsikin, for these special days, we interrupt our regular Torah reading order. Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, Purim, Taniot, Ma'amadot. That's the Ma'amadot were the the special when your town's priests would go up to Jerusalem to do their weekly duty. The locals would read the Torah portion of the creation Torah portion, and on Yom Kippur. So I'd say that we interrupt the regular order of readings for these special occasions. Bishlama leman de amar leseder parshiot hu chozer. Abaye explains his proof. Granted, according to the one who said that one resumes the regular weekly order of Torah portions, this statement in the Mishnah is referring to the fact that there is a reading of the weekly Torah portion on weekdays. If one of the special days listed in the Mishnah occurs on Monday or Thursday, the weekly Torah reading is replaced by the special portion for that day. However, according to one who said that one resumes the regular weekly order of Haftarot, what could the Mishnah mean when it says the regular cycle is interrupted? We don't have a Haftarah for the weekdays. So his argument is the weekly portion is upended with these special weeks. Because during the week on Monday and Thursday we read the first aliyah of the coming week's Torah portion. So that whole thing, he's suggesting you're interrupting the weekly cycle of readings, which means that I guess you'd read something. I'm not really sure what he's saying about you read on Monday and Thursday, but when we say weekly order is upended and it resumes, then we must be talking about Torah readings. But there's no Haftarot during the week. We don't have weekly, when it says weekly Haftarot, you read it on Shabbat, but you don't read it during the week. So he thinks that means that it must be referring to Rabbi Ami's opinion when he says the regular weekly order of Torah portions, whatever you're reading during the week for Torah, including Shabbat, of course. The Idach, the other one, Rabbi Yirmiyah, however, would counter, this case is as it is, and this case is as it is, meaning, on days when there's a Haftarah, the reference in the Mishnah is to the order of Haftarot, Shabbat. On weekdays, when there's no Haftarah, the reference is to the order of the Torah readings. Therefore, no proof can be deduced from this Mishnah. He says, you're right, we don't have a regular Haftarah, we don't have weekday Haftarot. So that's completely different. We're talking about Shabbat when we have a Haftarah, and we have a special Haftarah for these 4 special Shabbatot. So what's suspended, what's changed on these 4 special Shabbatot? The Haftarah readings. But it has nothing to do with the weekday. Okay, let's see. So what's another? Okay. Uvatanit lama li hafsaka. The Gemara asks, but on fast days, why do I need to have any interruption of the regular order of Torah readings? Right? Because we don't have a fast day on Shabbat. Let us read in the morning. Oh, no, this is what he because on Taniot, on a fast day, you have 2 readings, 2 Torah readings. You have one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So he says, Likrei mitzafra be'inyana diyoma, uva mincha b'tanita. Let's read in the morning the regular weekly portion of the day, and in the afternoon, you can just read, that's when you can read the fast day portion. You don't really need to change the weekly reading at that point. I'm trying to think, that's not what we do either. Okay. The Gemara comments, this supports the statement of Rav Huna, for Rav Huna said, from the morning of communal fast, a gathering is held in the synagogue. The community leaders examine the conduct of the townspeople and admonish those whose behavior is found wanting. Therefore, there is no time in the morning to read the Torah portion for fast days. I think we saw that in Tanit. Heichi avdinan. So what does the community do on a public fast day? Abaye said, mitzafra lepalge diyoma. In the morning until the middle of the day, the community gathers in the synagogue, and the leaders examine the affairs of the people. Because remember, why are you fasting in the first place? Because there's no rain. And there's no rain because obviously we're not acting properly. So we've got to check, we've got to do tshuva to make sure that the rain starts coming. And then from the middle of the day until the evening, a quarter of that time is spent reading from the Torah and the reading the Haftarah. And a quarter of the time is spent praying, as it is said. And they read in the book of the Torah of the Lord, their God, 1/4 of the day, and a quarter of the day they confessed and they prostrated themselves before the Lord, their God. Okay, and then if you remember, we had this very same argument in Tanit. So here it's, first we examine first half of the day, we look into our deeds and we think about what we've done wrong. Second half of the day, first part is spent reading Torah and the Haftarah for the special reading for fast days. And that the second part of that afternoon is spent praying. The epuch ana, but maybe it should be reversed. And the first half of the day should be spent reading Torah and praying, and the second half of the day should be spent examining the affairs of the townspeople. And the Gemara says, no, don't let it enter your mind to be this way, because in the book of Ezra, it says, everyone trembled at the words of the God of Israel due to the transgression of the exiles gathered around me, and I sat appalled until the evening offering. And then it's written in the next verse, and at the evening offering I arose from my fast. Having rent my garments and my mantle, I fell on my knees and I spread out my hands to the Lord my God. This indicates the first half of a public fast should be dedicated to self-inspection, and the rest of the day should be devoted to prayer. Because why is it? because then everyone trembled at the words of the Lord, at the words of the God of Israel due to the transgression of the exiles. Okay. Oh, okay. So they were, the first part, they were examining their deeds because they were trembling at their transgressions. And then at the evening offering, I arose from my fast and and I fell on my knees and okay, I guess that was the prayer part. It doesn't really help us here.
I think it has more to do if you do Torah, if you do the Torah first and then judge people, you're going to kind of maybe even subconsciously pick and choose. Oh, I found this thing that applies to my neighbor who did something wrong, and so everything's his fault. And I think it sort of makes people look at it with a wider scope instead of trying to pick and choose blame or try to find a specific reason.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy planted something wrong, so it's all his fault that we're doing what we're doing, or that kind of thing.
I guess I'm not seeing the. Wait, let me just see my notes here. What maybe Rabbi Culp had some. Let's see here. No, you didn't have anything. Okay.
Either that, or you inspect the community first to figure out what you're doing wrong, and then realize how you're supposed to pray all afternoon.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that way.
Okay. Don't get much help here. All right. So, but in any case, that's it must be that because at I think it's because Elias Fukol Chared B'divrei Elohei Yisrael al Hagolah ve'ani Yoshem Yeshomam ad lemincha ha'erev. Yeah, I just think it's because the first part was you're gathering Yeyasfu and Kol Chared B'divrei Elohei Yisrael. You're trembling at the words of God because you're thinking about what you've done wrong. And Uva mincha ha'erev kamti mita'aniti. But I don't know why getting up from my fast proves that you should be doing your Torah study.
Well, but there's some prayer or something, raising the arms to.
Yeah, maybe that. I guess that's it. Or the the fast.
I'm not sure. I don't think like those people that.
Should do a prayer.
I spread out my hands to the Lord my God.
Yeah, or just the idea of kamti, I arose. So what are you rising from? Well, you must have been on your, prostrate praying, or I guess that's it. I know we did this in Tanit, but shows how much my memory serves. Okay, next Mishnah. Here we are. B'Pesach, Korin b'Parashat Mo'adot. Shel Torah Kohanim, Ba'atzeret Shiva Shvuot, B'Rosh Hashanah, B'Chodesh HaShvi'i, B'Echad LaChodesh, B'Yom HaKippurim Achrei Mot, B'Yom Tov HaRishon Shel Chag Korin B'Parashat Mo'adot, Shebatorah Kohanim, B'Sha'ar Kol Yemot HaChag, B'Korbanot HaChag. All right, so here's the Torah. Now this is a little bit different. The Gemara corrects it, but this is in the Mishnah. On Passover, we read from the portion that we actually just read from on Shavuot of the festivals, the section of festivals in Leviticus. On Shavuot, we read. No, what am I talking about? Shavuot, we did right. No. On Passover, we do read from the section from Leviticus 22-23. It's just the second day, and then on Shavuot, we read from the festival section in Deuteronomy, although here they've really limited it. They just got the 7 weeks, the portion of the 7 weeks. On Rosh Hashanah, we read again from the section of festivals in Leviticus. Yom Kippur, we read from Leviticus 16, which is what we continue to do today. On the first festival day of Sukkot, we read from, again, that section about Sukkot in the festivals in Leviticus. And on the other days of Sukkot, we read from Numbers where it describes the special or offerings on each day of Sukkot. On Hanukkah, we read from the portion about the gifts from the princes, which is what we do. On Purim, we read from Vayavo Amalek from Exodus. Yep, that's still the same. Rosh Chodashim, we read Rosh Chodesh. We read that section on Rosh Chodesh. And then in the Ma'amadot, again, the group who are in the towns reading when their priests are in Jerusalem, they read from the creation story. On fast days, we read the blessings and curses. We don't do that today, but they say on fast days you read from the blessings and curses at the end of Leviticus. And ein mafsikin beklalot ela echad korei et kulan. And this is true. We do continue this. You don't break up the curses section from different people reading it. Only one person reads the curses. On Monday and Thursday, Sheni v'Chamishi, and on Shabbat Mincha Korin Kesidran. Meaning we read in the order of the regular order of the Torah portions, but it doesn't. Now we know today we read the first Aliyah. I don't know they're not really suggesting what you read here, but that's what we do today. We read the next week's Torah portion, the first Aliyah. Ve'ein olin lahem mina cheshbon. However, these readings are not counted as progression in the reckoning of the reading of the Torah portions. That is, you read the same portion each day, Monday, Thursday, and Shabbat Mincha, Monday and Thursday. You read the same section. You don't read like the first Aliyah on Shabbat afternoon, second Aliyah Monday, third Aliyah on Thursday. You read the same portion and then you read the whole thing on Shabbat. Shene'emar, and how do we understand these readings? Vayidaber Moshe et modeh Adonai el bnei Israel, because Moshe said, he declared to the children of Israel the appointed seasons of the Lord, which means mitzvatan sheyehu korin kol echad ve'echad bizmano. You read the mitzvah of that particular festival at that time. So that's why we read, we're reading from the festivals about that festival, or in the case of Hanukkah, you're reading the gifts which were brought to the at the construction at the beginning, the inauguration of the tabernacle, because of course Hanukkah's dedication of the temple. And Purim, we're reading about Amalek because of the connection with Haman. Go a little bit farther here. Tanu Rabbanan, b'Pesach korin b'Parashat Moedot, u'maftirim b'Pesach Gilgal. Va'idna de'ika treyome yom kama b'Pesach Gilgal, u'lamachar b'Pesach Yoshiyahu. On the first day of Pesach, according to the Baraita, the congregation reads from the portion of the festivals, 22, 23 in Leviticus, and they read the Haftarah, the account of the Passover celebrated at Gilgal. That's from Joshua, the first Pesach in the land. But nowadays, because we in the diaspora, because of course this is Babylonian Talmud, when there are two festival days, the first day they read from the Joshua section, and the second day they read about Passover observed by Josiah in 2 Kings. The Baraita continues, Usha'ar yemot Pesach milaket v'korei me'inyano shel Pesach. And on the rest of the Passover, because you've got a whole week, you read the portions related to Passover. And Rav Papa had a mnemonic, Mem Aleph Pev Vav, and that's because it's related to the four portions. Exodus 12, which begins Mishku. The second one is from Exodus 22, which begins Im, so that's an Aleph. Pei is for Psol Lecha, that's from Exodus 34, and the Vav is Vayidaber, which is exactly what we do to this day. Those are to this day, the Chol HaMoed Passover readings. Yom Tov Acharon Shal Pesach Korin Vayihi Bishloach. That's and it came to pass when Pharaoh let the people go. That's the crossing of the Sea of Reeds. And the Haftarah is David spoke, chapter 22 in the second book of Samuel, which is a poem. So it relates. You got the song at the sea, and you got the song of David. In the diaspora, where you have an eighth day, you read the portion Kol HaBachor, which is the festival section in the book of Deuteronomy, and the Haftarah is from Isaiah. Now here it says, because it discusses the downfall of Sancheriv, which occurred on the night of Passover. It's also that famous portion of the little child shall lead them, and this looking at harmony at the end of time, and so it kind of discusses the next redemption. Exodus was the great redemption, but there's even a greater one coming, which is the Messianic era, and that's the next one. So we're looking forward to that in the end of Pesach. Abar Abaye, v'ha'idna nahug alma lemikre mishoch Torah kadesh bechasba b'sol b'midbara shalach buchra. He's got the mnemonic based on these phrases: draw the bull, sanctify with money, hew in the wilderness, send the firstborn. Because his understanding is that today, the first day's reading, which is exactly what we do, is from chapter 12. That is, take out your, to draw out the lambs. That's what we're reading on day one. And then the second day you would read from Leviticus 22-23. And then the following portions that they already mentioned. And I forgot where we ended up to. I think we went right here. I think this is the end. I stopped at Rosh Hashanah. On Atzeret, and Atzeret is the name for Shavuot in rabbinic times. Shiva Shavuot. On Shavuot, they read the Torah portion of 7 weeks, and the Haftarah is from Habakkuk, which mentions the giving of Torah at Sinai. But others say, which is what we follow, B'chodesh HaShlishi, that's we just read on this past week, was the giving of the Ten Commandments, the revelation at Sinai. And the Haftarah is also a revelatory passage from Ezekiel. Now, though, since there are 2 days, again, in the diaspora of Shavuot, we act in accordance with both opinions, but in the reverse order, and that's exactly what we do. So the second day of Shavuot, we read from the Deuteronomy passage of the festivals, including that verses that talk about the 7 weeks, and the Haftarah is from Habakkuk. So you can see there were a little bit of changes over time. They changed, and glad they did, because these Torah portions make so much more sense to read, on Pesach, to read the experience of the Exodus, and on Shavuot to read the Revelation, because of course that's what we're celebrating. So okay, so that's the oh, hey John. So that is 31a. So we will finish next week, same time, same place. We will finish Megillah, and we'll celebrate. I really wanted to do it in-house, but well, let me ask you. Let me ask you this. If you'd rather do this, wait. I have to see if I can. I see if we did it on a Sunday morning, we could all come in and have like a little brunch celebration. But I can't remember if I'm available on that Sunday. Let's see. The 19th. Oh, it's Father's Day. I don't know if that's a great day to do it. I mean, I'd be willing to. I just don't know if people feel strongly about getting all together in one place to finish this study, or just doing it on Zoom is fine, and we can finish it next Tuesday night. But I do think we should celebrate it, because it was a significant amount of material, a little longer than even than Tanit. So I don't know what people feel like. Does it matter if we, you want to do it in person? Or
And
you want-
when we're around groups indoors, we are masking.
Okay.
So-
Oh, okay. Yeah, and
That means we're not eating food.
okay, and
even
and
though
unfortunately, on the first time that we had our communal meal a couple weeks ago, that's when I got COVID, and a
Right.
couple other people got COVID. So maybe it's safer. Okay. All right. So then you're going to have to bring your own. It's going to have to bring your own seudah, BYOS. Bring your own seudah for next week when we celebrate concluding this. Okay.
Very good. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Very good. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here.